There are 1.4 billion teenagers in the world today, estimated. There are 1.3 billion teenagers on social media today. Now, just to put that into a bit of perspective, I think a fair amount of the 1.4 billion come from extremely rural areas. This device is what has changed the world. When we went on a Mozambican mission a couple years ago, the people there were living in huts with mud walls, thatch roofs, but they had a cell phone. 63% of teenagers do not make their social media profiles private. 63% of teenagers know all of their contacts on social media. 63% of them know their contacts, all of their contacts. Now to think, 63% of 1.3 billion. 37% of 1.3 billion do not know the people on their social media lists. I think that's quite scary. How easy is it for your teenager or your child to fall into that 37%? 37% sounds small, but when it's 37% of 1.3 billion, it's pretty big. 56% of teenagers do not make all their social media profiles private. Now on Instagram, for example, if you know Instagram, you can go on some of the profiles, and basically when you open the profile, there's a little sign of a lock. And that's basically, it's private. It's been made private. People going onto the profile cannot see that person's pictures. They cannot see that person's profile. They can only see the basic elements of it, such as the profile picture, etc. 56% of teenagers do not make their profiles private. My profile's not private. Anyone can see my stuff. I know my sister's profiles aren't private. Mom, don't jump in. 56%, over half of the 1.3 billion teenagers on social media have not made their accounts private. That means anyone of those 750,000 predators can access it. Something to think about. 65% of students have shared a password with someone else. Would you ever share your bank details? Your bank password? These kids are sharing their social media passwords. Anyone can access their profile. Anyone can see what they shouldn't see. I don't think teenagers in particular realize how serious their privacy is. 65% of children have accepted WhatsApp requests or other instant messaging messages from people they do not know personally. Now that's not just someone following you on Instagram. That's not someone sending you a friend request on Facebook. That's someone contacting you directly. And these kids are accepting it. These kids are accepting it. They're speaking to people they don't know. And you can see. They always think it can't happen to them. They always think it can't happen to them. 23% of teenagers have been asked to send pictures and or personal information to someone they've met online. These are strangers who are asking kids for pictures and their personal information. And I'd say 100% of the 23% send pictures and sometimes will send out personal information that they shouldn't send. 23% of children have agreed to meet someone face to face that they've met online. Those three girls fall into that category. I'm willing to say that it's more than 23%. 37% of teenagers have come across something worrying or upsetting. Why do you think depression and anxiety are on the rise amongst youngsters? You think when you were younger, now that may be way back, or it may just be the other day. When you were younger, how long did it take for news to travel? How long did it take for you to find out about the next tragedy? These kids are finding out about tragedy after tragedy. Shooting in the US, another shooting in the US, a bombing in the UK, somewhere else in Europe. It's this constant feed, an instant feed of bad news. And the kids are absorbing this. The teens are absorbing this. One day your kid's going to come home and talk to you about politics because of social media and the effects of social media. And you can find 100% of these statistics on Google. You can find all of these statistics on Google. You just type in social media statistics, and you will see frightening statistics. Frightening statistics. Time spent on social media, the average age on social media, the minimum age on social media. I'm sure there are like 9-year-olds running around on social media. When I was in school, there was a 10-year-old walking with an iPhone. I still had a BlackBerry. It's not fair, but anyway. It is a little bit. I wouldn't ever want an iPhone, personally, but yeah, I had a BlackBerry that could barely work, so that was probably the source of it. But I want to ask you, and you're allowed to answer. I want to ask you, when you gave your child a cell phone, can I just ask how many of your kids have cell phones? You can just by show of hands. All right, those of you whose children have cell phones, when you gave them a cell phone, what was the point? Thank you, Craig. What was the point of giving your child a phone? Why did you give them a phone? To communicate, for you to communicate with him. See where he is, because he's always out late, eh? Tell you, youth. I think that's probably the number one reason is communicating with your kids while they're at school. What time must I fetch you? Any other reasons? So schools are making kids get cell phones now. Thank you. So basically you wanted to give them WhatsApp. Am I right? You wanted to give them SMSs. It's still a thing. And you wanted to give them the opportunity to make and receive calls. Is that correct? Well, when you gave them a cell phone, here's what you actually gave them. You gave them WhatsApp. Well done. An instant messaging service where they can contact their friends, correct? Where they can contact you, correct? Where strangers can contact them. Do you know how easy it is to send a contact number over WhatsApp? And the kids are doing it these days. There's a teenager in our youth group who told me how she was talking with a guy who got her number through her one friend. And they were having a fat chat. You gave them Facebook. Now, according to the teenagers in our teens group, Facebook is old. But I would personally disagree, as majority of the kids that I went to school with are on Facebook still. So please don't write Facebook off. These are kids that are still at school. They're posting their proud pictures on Facebook. But yes, I am getting old. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Honesty is the best policy. I'll chat to you afterwards, Herman. You gave them Instagram. Instagram is a social media platform where you can only post videos or pictures. A social media platform only with videos and pictures. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? You gave them Instagram. You probably don't know that they're on Instagram, but you gave them Instagram. Do you know that you can access pornography through Instagram? Instagram is trying to clamp down on it, but it's out there. It's out there. I can tell you now, the average age of a young boy who begins watching porn is 10 years old. That's when these little dudes are finding this stuff. Why? Because they're given social media. You've given them Snapchat. Snapchat. A wonderful application. Absolutely wonderful. Here's what Snapchat is, all right? It's exactly that. You snap and you chat. You take a picture or you post a video with a caption, and that's how you share. Now, the wonderful thing for teenagers about Snapchat is that after a short period of time, that picture is taken down so people can't see it anymore. So what do you think goes on Snapchat? It's wonderful to think about, isn't it? What our kids forget is that, and I'm sure you may know this, there is a facility on your phone called Screenshot. So where they think their picture is not being saved, it's probably been saved by some creep out there who happened to run into it. Snapchat is probably one of the worst things to happen to teenagers. I hate this app. I hate it. And I hate hearing when people in our youth group, teenagers in our youth group, are on Snapchat, because I know what it's about. The other thing you've given them is Pinterest, another platform for sharing particularly pictures and ideas. It's great for arts and crafts. In fact, we used Pinterest last year for ideas for arts and crafts at Holiday Club. It's a really awesome application. And at this point, I'd like to say that social media is good. How did I market Equip? Social media. That's what I did. Social media is useful. It is helpful. And like Pinterest, you can get great ideas off all of it. But again, another picture posting social media platform. The difference between Pinterest and Instagram is that Pinterest is not trying to clamp down on pornography. It is very accessible, and your teenagers are on it. And the thing is, Pinterest does come across as innocent. It really does. Another thing you've given them, and I've just used this logo, but I'd like to talk about all of the live streaming services, music services. So this is an app called Spotify. It's recently, I think in the last 4 weeks, been released in South Africa, and it's really cool. I use it. In fact, the music that was playing when you guys came in was being played from Spotify. You pay 59 Rand a month, and you can access any artist you want. Here's the best part. Mom and Dad can't monitor the music I'm listening to. And we know what music can do, right? The young people love the music artists out there. They love them. They look up to them. And everything that Drake and Kendrick Lamar and all those other guys say, everything that they say is true, and it sticks. How they refer to women, I want to refer to women that way. But now there's no way to monitor what your kid has been listening to. Now, this isn't the only app where you can do this. Google Play and iTunes, you pay 59 Rand a month, and you can access any music you want. All three of those platforms. All three of them. Another streaming application site that has been put onto mobile devices is YouTube. Now you can stream any kind of music from YouTube as well. Most kids don't use it on their phones because you can't lock your phone and listen to music. It turns off. It is the one thing that social media has not been able to do, and many young people are upset about it. I'm just confused as to why they haven't been able to do it, or why they have chosen not to. But you can find any videos on YouTube. Now, YouTube doesn't necessarily have pornography. However, you can go out and you can search for sex scenes in movies, and you'll probably find it. There's all sorts of content on YouTube. People who make YouTube videos are now known as video influencers because that's exactly what they do. Think about Craig. Why is that guy trying to do what he's trying to do? Because he knows he's influencing people, particularly younger people. He's influencing Craig. They are video influencers. That is what they do. They influence the way you think through their videos. Your kids are able to access YouTube. My sister, we cannot get her off YouTube. She's glued to it. And in some ways, I think she has been indoctrinated by some of the views on YouTube. And I hope she doesn't listen to this, but that is the truth. Another thing you've given them access to pornography. Direct access. There are websites where you can stream and watch pornography for free. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to have an account. You can just watch. Such as Pornhub and many other porn sites. When you give them this device, you are giving them free pornography if it is not managed properly. You need to think about this, parents. We need to think about this. And finally, there was another video that I was going to show, but I preferred that one. But you've given them an app called Tinder. Tinder is an application where you as a single person, well, actually not only single people use it, unfortunately, but the idea behind it is that a single person who cannot find a person to be in a relationship with goes onto Tinder, and they kind of put in what kind of person they are, their interests, and then they put in what they're looking for. And Tinder gives you suggestions. Megs and I are going to dinner with a couple tonight who met over Tinder. Do I recommend that people get together over online dating sites? Definitely not. Is it a thing that young people are using? 100%. The video I was going to show you was a young 18-year-old girl who had the same situation. Another social experiment, but an 18-year-old girl. Please don't think that because your kid is past 15, they can protect themselves. They're useless. Their friends will probably run away when things go wrong. If they're going to be in a group, they need to be in a group of about 5. And then they mustn't make stupid decisions, but I don't know how you're going to deal with that. You've given them access to sites such as Tinder. Online dating. It's real and it's happening. The fact of the matter is you've basically given them access to the world. As innocent and as original as your idea was to give them WhatsApp and SMSs and phone calls and just to communicate with us and maybe their friends, you have given them access to the world. Now, isn't that a scary thing? There's a reason why it's called the World Wide Web. Here's another scary thing. You've given the world access to them. You've given the world access to them. Do any of you know what's happening with Mark Zuckerberg at the moment? The owner of Facebook? He is being sued for millions because of a major data leak, people's private and personal information that was given to other companies. Do you know that as South Africans, we seem to think, oh, shame those poor Americans. Yet 60,000 profiles from South Africa were leaked. I wouldn't be surprised if my profile was one of them. All of us, the moment we get onto social media, the world has access to us and our information. We give the world that access. When you give your child or your teenager a cell phone, you give them access to social media. You give them access to all of these applications. But you're giving them access to the world, and you're giving the world access to them. And I think that's something that a lot of parents seem to forget. And the fact of the matter is, thanks to social media, we have lost our connection. In trying to get better connected, we have lost our connection. When I was in about grade 7 or 8, one of my mates got a phone. It was when Blackberries were the thing to have. And he got a Blackberry, and I couldn't stand being around him because he was always on his phone. Do you know when I got a Blackberry, I had the same problem? Couldn't get my face out of my phone. And then I had my family, my sisters, my mom, and my dad. You've always got your face in your phone. Always. That was the thing. My face was always in my phone, right? But the funny thing is, when my sisters got phones, their faces were in their phones. I told them, whenever they said that, I was like, your time is coming. Your time is coming. Mom, you can agree with me here. I'm better now than they are, correct? They're a lot worse. It's okay. I'll take your silence as a yes. And here's the best part. When Mom got a phone, what happened? Her face was in the phone. My dad couldn't be bothered with his phone, to be honest with you, but he has his own difficulties, and we'll get to that later. But in trying to connect better, we've handed ourselves the very devices that will disconnect us. Look around you when you go to the shops. Please, please, please. The one place where it just seems to be, I don't know why, but if you go past Figo's at Monty, I feel like people go and sit there to disconnect. The amount of families that are on their phones, there's the kid who's on the tablet, but usually a 3 or 4 year old. Kids on the tablet, one kid's on their cell phone, one person's reading a magazine, they've got to get with the times, and then another person's reading the menu. But there's times when I've seen it, couples go on dates, both of them. Are you FaceTiming? But the fact is, when you go to family events, have a look at that as well. Go to family events. How do the young people interact with one another? Oh, dude, check what I saw on Instagram. And then before you know it, they're all here. It irritates me. It irritates me that young people who actually don't really need these devices have them. But the problem is they don't know how to use them, and that's what bugs me. Because they overuse it. They abuse it. Social media has been proven to be an addiction. You can be addicted, as you would be to a drug, to social media. It plays with your mind, as a drug would play with your mind. So, what are the implications of this? Younger people are exposed to a lot more than what is necessary. They're exposed to a lot more than what is necessary, such as sex. They're exposed to sex and the reality of sex. They're exposed to crime. They're exposed to, and with regards to crime, the world's going to tell them that this crime's okay as long as you don't do this one. It's okay to just pull something off a shelf and put it in your pocket in the shops, just don't kill somebody. That's a bit far. And that's what social media will teach them, that it's funny when people steal. All right? It'll teach them about politics. Little kids think they know what they're talking about when it comes to politics. What they don't realize is that the media is trying to appeal to someone else, right? But they will come home and try and tell you about politics. They're exposed to drugs. Oh man, you go on YouTube. I go on YouTube to watch videos of drunk people because it's funny. It really is. But that's what kids are doing. They're exposed to the effects of alcohol. They're exposed to the effects of drugs. Have you guys heard of the drug called Flakka? Right? That arrived in Durban in December, just in time for VAC. Perfect timing, isn't it? And there were videos of people who had taken Flakka and the effects of it going around. And it was funny to see how this drug was messing with people. But the problem is it makes you insensitive. It makes you very insensitive to the effects of drugs. Social media will tell your kids that weed is okay. Weed is cool. Weed is fine. It's what we're all doing. So why don't you do it? Before you as a parent can go in and explain to them what the dangers are, social media brainwashes them and makes them think that weed is fine, just don't take heroin, that's a little bit dangerous. The world teaches them about things long before you as the parent or as we as the church can. The world gets hold of them long before we can. Do you know one issue with young people today is this issue of sexuality? Homosexuality, bisexuality, transgenders, and all of them, I bet you now, you go home and ask your kids, all of them will have an opinion. If they have a cell phone, they will have an opinion. And more often than not, it is not a Bible-based opinion, it is what the world has fed them. And that is that, it's okay. And the Bible says it isn't. But social media connects with them first, before we can. It connects with them, it makes the effort to connect with them, and it brainwashes them into its way of thinking. It's a one-way discussion. It's a one-way discussion. They can't ask questions. They just take it at face value. It's what it is, isn't it? Through social media, the world is able to, in a sense, brainwash our teens and our children into thinking its way. And losing our connection, the world connects with them very quickly, and it influences them before we can make that biblical influence. It influences them before we can make a biblical influence. And so now I have to ask, why has this happened? You see, moms and dads, it's fairly simple. Because of our lack of connection, the world connects with them first, as we've established. They become disconnected from us, real people, the real influences. And they become more connected with Hollywood, the influences of the world, the video influences that are on YouTube, and their opinion matters more than mom, dad, or even the pastor at church. Why? Because, as you asked, they look up to them. Why do they look up to them? I really don't know. Various people, Craig's answer was spot on. Various people will look up to different people for different reasons. But the fact is, when a young person looks up to another person, that person very quickly becomes their idol or their God. And everything that that person says is the truth. Everything that that person says is the truth. When the world, we need to also understand that the world has taken the time and has made the effort to connect with our young people and discuss these issues with them, right? Mom and dad are busy at work. They come home, they cook food, and then they're tired. I can't talk to them about these issues. I can't ask them about sex. Hey, I'll tell you what, let me Google sex. And that's where it goes wrong. But you see, through social media, the world has taken the time to connect with our teenagers and our young people and have this discussion. But as I said, it's a one-way discussion. The world feeds its garbage to the kids, and they believe it. They believe it. And finally, we stopped talking about these big issues at home and at the church. We've stopped talking about sex at church and at home. I'll let the teachers do it. Do you know what the teachers are teaching the kids about sex at school? They literally show them where everything goes and why it goes there and how it works from there on. They don't tell them that the Bible says you shouldn't have sex before marriage. What they don't teach them is the damages of sex before marriage. They teach them the science behind sex. Please stop waiting for school to teach your kids about sex. I know it's an awkward conversation. I'm sure it is. I'm not looking forward to having that conversation with my kids one day. If you're not comfortable having that conversation with your kids, please contact me. If it's a girl, there's Megan and Nono. Their details are in your booklets. Contact them. They'd be willing to sit with a girl and talk about this. I'd be willing to sit with your boys and talk about this. But we need to start talking about it. We need to start addressing the issue of sexuality as well. We need to address the issue of drugs before the world can indoctrinate. Before the world can indoctrinate and teach them its ways. So we've given them access to the world before preparing them for it. And that's where we're going wrong. And I say we're going wrong because we're in the struggle together. I might be the youth worker here at church, but if you have a teenager in your home, God has called you to be a youth worker in your home. Linda would be considered the children's worker here at Santon. But if you have children in your home, you have been called to be a children's worker. We are all in this together. I wouldn't even call this a parenting conference. We could call this a children and youth workers conference, because that's what this is. It's what we're doing. You have a ministry at home, and I have the ministry here. But this ministry here won't work if you're not doing the ministry at home as well. Once a week, twice a week is not enough. We need every day of the week. Who's the right person to teach your kid to talk? Not a trick question. You. Who's the right person to teach your kid to walk? You. You guys are like the teenagers on a Friday night. Who's the right person to teach your kids to swim apart from Levon? You. If you don't know how to swim, probably not. But if you know how to swim, you would be the one to start teaching your kid to swim. And when they finally get to that age where they should be driving, who's the right person to teach them to drive? Definitely not the wives. I can imagine. Give them an English test without teaching them to talk. Would you do that? Would you get them to run across the street without teaching them to walk? Unless they've been really naughty, right? Without teaching them to swim, would you throw them in the pool? Would you put them behind the steering wheel of a car without teaching them to drive? So why then do we give them a cell phone or a device that can connect them to all of those harmful things without teaching them how to use it and the dangers if it's not used properly? Because they aren't tested on it, are they? There's no test to pass. Just hand them the device, they'll figure it out. Trust me, they'll figure all of that out without you even knowing. And they'll figure it out quickly. So why aren't we teaching our kids about the dangers of social media before giving them a cell phone? Maybe it's because we don't actually know how dangerous it is. And that's why you're here today. Thank you for being here today. I had a dream that no one pitched. So I am grateful that you're here today. See, a phone can't drown you or hit you or kill you. You can't fail a phone test. But we need to start teaching them about the dangers, because if they fail this test, that happens. And that goes wrong. Very wrong.